relationships. We see them in TV, we see them in movies, we see it in real life, we see them on Instagram. How do relationships start and what makes them successful? We see different types of relationships represented in TV and movies all the time. The classic haters to lovers trope, the will they won't they couple.
We were on a break!
Unrequited love.
I'm in love with you.
What?
So then how do people pursue relationships with one another? And what makes them successful?
I'm 23 and I'm still single. When I tell people that, I get a mixed response. I mean, it's something like I feel a little self-conscious about. I mean, I feel like by now I should have had at least one successful relationship or one relationship. What does that mean to be 23 and still single? I've heard people say, oh, it means you're really like serious, you're nitpicky, which I mean, I will admit that I am when it comes to men. But doesn't mean I'm too picky. See, that's the space I'm trying to find. What is too picky versus what is not picky enough?
I decided to interview some friends and family, whether they were single, dating, engaged, or married, to see what their perspectives were.
Two people having the same values together, basically having good communication, wanting to have the same thing for the present and the future.
I think like being all in, like no matter what.
Well, we all choose to be committed or non-committed to certain things. But I think when it's involving another person, you need to be on the same page with that definition with the other person of what the requirement would be regarding that commitment. So in general, obviously we all think that commitment is a dedication, a faithfulness to that situation, that relationship, and the effort and the level of attention and attentiveness to that situation or that person or that relationship.
If you look up the definition of the word commitment in the dictionary, it means you're pledging yourself to someone. To me, commitment means just that. You're sticking with someone through thick and thin. And that was a common denominator I found with a lot of the answers that people gave me on commitment. So let's say you're looking for a long-term relationship and you're looking for your next partner. That leads me into my next question of what do people look for when they're looking for a partner?
Definitely values have to align similar, because I think it's really important to find someone who shares those same values, because when it comes to like raising a family together, if you have complications with your values, then raising kids together can be really hard and difficult. So that's a priority and a thing I value the most in a relationship.
I really want a guy that like is very family oriented, good with kids. And I know like it sounds cliche because I'm 20, so I'm young, but I definitely want I love a smart guy, someone who is very book smart and life smart too, but going to school or doing something with his life, he has goals in life. I want someone that wants to achieve something in life, has something to work towards every day.
Communication, and I do think, I would say like religion too, but at least for me, that's a big one. So like, not religion, but beliefs like Christianity and stuff like that.
They're like willing to share like similar interests, and if there are different interests, but that they like kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they kind of like mix like well.
We all are looking for different things when it comes to a relationship, whether it's good communication, similar values, someone who just can make us laugh, someone we like to talk to, someone who can be like our best friend. But we're still having all these things in our mind that we want to look for in a partner. And especially with deal breakers, we have things that we know would make us want to cut off a relationship or not even have a relationship romantically, at least, with someone at all.
And if he doesn't fix this, if he doesn't explain himself, dump his ass.
But if we all have these different sorts of things we're looking for, then what makes a relationship healthy? And what is everyone's idea of a healthy looking relationship?
Honestly, I would have to say my parents. My parents were 10 years apart from each other, and more recently, you know, just seeing the way my mom would take care of my dad, even though he was completely disabled, you know, just seeing that and the fact that they still told each other they loved each other every day, that even though it was so difficult for both of them to either have, you know, a social life, a personal life, they made it work. And, you know, now that my dad's passed away, it's kind of like just seeing how much my mom misses his presence.
I think has the most to do with both people's boundaries, with both people's past, like how they were brought up or experiences they went through, and just with both people's like, I guess, visions or goals for the relationship and kind of their just overall demeanor. Like, everybody's kind of unique in their own way anyway, so I think that always kind of plays a factor, like, with what they're looking for in the relationship. But yeah, I think obviously a healthy relationship in general, like between any people, I feel like has to include some of the, I would hope, basic things that come to most people's minds, like you use respectful words with each other, like you respect each other's personal space, respect each other's like family and values, even just things like respecting each other's like preferences too, like even if it's not just something that's a really deep-seated value or not something that's necessarily like seated in like culture or religion.
You have mutual trust for each other. You maybe don't raise your voice at each other when you have arguments. When you're in an argument, you're not trying to blame the other person or be very pointed at them. It's very much you two against the problem and not you two against each other. Being supportive of each other and their accomplishments and not being like weird and passive aggressive or like envious, but really being happy for that other person. And then kind of, you know, going out of your way to make the other person happy and then not expecting anything in return, but just, you know, showing that love to the other person.
We all have ideas of what we think a healthy relationship should look like, whether we got that example from our parents or we just have our own ideals, like good communication, someone we really trust and we know we can tell everything to and they don't judge us. And that's what we all want, right? All the green flags to pop up. So we all have ideas of what we think a healthy relationship should look like. And some of us are in healthy relationships. But what about the people who aren't in relationships yet? Or maybe people that are just single right now? What do people have to say about crushes? What even is a crush to people? And what happens when you have a crush? Does it actually turn into something or is it just fizzle out? And what do people do when they have a crush? Tell them or not?
Having a physical attraction towards someone, and you can admire them from like afar, or you can like make moves or whatever. And the first major crush I had, that was my ex who I was with for a while. And then now I've just had like baby crushes, like nothing really major, nothing that I really thought to pursue.
Definitely the two people I dated, for sure I had crushes on. Definitely like some women I come across every now and then, like I definitely have a crush on, but some of them, like, because I just like to approach women in a certain way, like in a group setting kind of ish, and then like individually and everything too, and then, but for me sometimes, like, I would, to answer your definition of a crush for me is like someone who you're obviously like physically attracted to and everything too, obviously like you're sexually attracted to them, and then just somebody who like definitely, I don't know, who like gives you butterflies and everything too. So it's like, oh man, like I can't wait to see this person, or I can't wait to be around this person or anything too. So like yeah, I would say a crush definitely someone who, because you can just immediately look at somebody and be like, okay, like I'm very physically attracted to this person. So I would say a crush is more like on the physical traits and everything too, like being physically and like sexually like attracted to somebody.
When you like someone, you want to get to know them, you have these feelings towards them, more so than a friend, where you find a bit of an infatuation with the person, and there's like, yeah, there's a bit of a yearning there. Yeah, I've had crushes before, and usually it's like, I don't know, like I said, I just get a bit, I'm very interested in that person and hopeful that maybe that they'll like me back in the same way. And I guess the end goal is that we try out a relationship, but some crushes I think are just due to circumstance, and they're not like, I've had crushes before where I've looked back and been confused by it. I didn't understand why I had that feelings, and I think it was just sort of like I don't know, trying to look for some attention sometimes. So they're not always healthy, I don't think.
Crushes are sticky. For me, personally, I've had 2 crushes that I've told I like them and nothing came of it.
Hello, Jackson! You ready to rock tonight?
What?
Thank you! Good night, everybody!
So then I always wonder, how do people meet people anymore? For the people that are dating or engaged or married, how did they meet their current partner? How did that lead into them starting to date? And if they're beyond that point, how did they know they wanted to get married to the person?
Did I miss the story?
What's the story?
About how you proposed.
I actually would love to hear this story, Andrew. Would you tell us?
Margaret loves telling the story, so I'm just going to let her go ahead and do that.
So I met my current partner, well, actually my only partner, matter of fact. I met her working at the movie theater that we worked at, which is nearby. We started off just being coworkers, and I remember seeing her around and being like, hey, she's really pretty. I was like, oh, probably never gonna really get the chance to talk to her or anything. I was like, okay, whatever, like, didn't really sweat it. Then out of nowhere, a few of the guys at the theater, they started like hanging out, and then it ended up being like, oh, they started getting like everybody, because everybody was kind of cool with each other. They were like, let's just all hang out, like let's just all go do like outings together as like coworkers. So we ended up hanging out like that, and I was like, okay, she's really cool. I'm like, I really do like her, but I'm a very shy and like awkward person deep down. So like me explaining that, hey, like me even taking that chance of like, hey, I like you, it was too scary for me. And I was like crumbling inside basically. We started hanging out as coworkers. A few months passed and I completely fall in love with her, but I'm like, I need to tell her at least. I'm like, I need to do something. I can't just be like buddy and being all like secretive. I'm like, my mind was freaking out basically. It was around, no, it wasn't even around. It was in July. We were all hanging out still, and she was like, let's hang out, you and me. Like, let's do like something together. I'm like, okay, like let's do that. We go thrifting, we do like just normal things together. And it was a couple of other friends, and I was like, okay, I was like, at least I'm getting to know her more instead of just being like surrounded with a bunch of people and having her there and her like hearing whatever I'm saying. And it was actually like I forgot the week specifically, but it was just a week where we hung out and it went from like 0 to 100. It was that thrifting week. The next day we went to Knott's with our coworkers, but there was like too many people to be in one group, and we ended up being split up in like our own little like different group. And I remember she was in there with me, and I was like, okay, I was like, I really just would rather spend time with her, but I was still like freaking out inside. I was like, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm like, there's so many people around us. I don't want to make it obvious. I don't also want to just like be like, hey, let's go apart, like you and me. So I was freaking out, and it was definitely a nightmare of a day there. But she ended up saying that she wanted more time with me, and I remember her saying that too, because she was like, I wish we could just get apart. And my mind was freaking out. I was panicking and being like, what do I do? What do I do? What I say? I don't want to like fumble. I don't want to like mess this up or anything. So I remember being extra quiet, and I was like, this isn't helping. I was like, oh God. And okay, that happens. We go out to eat. We had like the same thing. We're sitting next to each other, like semi-close to each other. And I'm like, I really like her. I'm like, man, I'm hoping something happens, because I'm like, I'm too afraid to even like take that first step or like take that first reach or whatever. I was like, okay, I'm like, if something happens, like cool. If not, like bummer. And I remember saying, I was like, I want pictures with everybody that's here, because I was like, I really like everybody, like our friend group. I was like, I really like everybody. I was like, I want to like commemorate and like know, like have like something to remember. And we go outside of like a Denny's that we were eating, and I'm like freaking out. See, I get like all like anxious and nervous, like I'm still reliving it. But we go outside, and I was like, I want a picture with you. And she's like, okay, like that's fine. We have our friend take pictures of us, and I actually have them on the back of my phone. Hold on. Let me take them off. I always carry it around, but we end up taking 2 of them so we could keep one for each other. And we took this one. I don't know if you can really see it that well, but we took this picture, and as soon as like it printed and developed, and like we took a look at it, I remember she was hugging me, like she had her like arm around me, and she's like, oh, you're so cute. And it like, my mind like went from like freaking out to like anxiety, like panic mode. I was like, I was like, oh my God, she said this. I was like, what do I do? We end up hanging out the next following couple days, and she's telling me about herself and, you know, her things. And I'm like, man, I wish I was like able to help her. I'm like, I want to be like supportive, and I want to be like there for you. I was like, what do I do? I'm like freaking out. We end up hanging out one day, and I remember it being awkward because there was like a tension there. I was like, I don't know what tension there is, but I was like, I'm freaking out. And we were just talking. We were like just going back and forth kind of a little bit. And I remember being very, very quiet and very, very shy. And she was like, okay, whatever time passes, she's like, I have to get going. I'm like, okay, that's fine. She's like, okay. She worked the next day with me. So she was like, I'll see you tomorrow. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I go in for a hug, and we hug. We do that. And as soon as I'm like letting go, she like comes in and she like kisses me. And I'm like, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, it was true. Like my mind was like, it wasn't playing around. I was like, this is really happening. And she tells me like she really likes me and she wants to like get to know me and she wants to be together and all these stuff. Like, but she was just working out things with herself, so she wanted to go through that first, which I was like, yes. I was like, whatever it is, I'm like, I'm gonna be supportive of you no matter what. Cause I had always like had that like little inner feeling. I was like, I feel like we're meant to be together, but I'm like, I want to be supportive still. Like, I don't want to just get ahead of myself and be like, my mind is telling me this, when reality it's like not even the case. But yeah, first thing we did, I was like, I'm gonna be supportive of you no matter what. I was like, you can always count on me. I was like, I'm always gonna be here. And really from there, it spawned us just being together for like a whole month, the whole month of August, which was the greatest time. Even though I was still insanely anxious, I was like, this is really like the happiest I've ever been. And then come around September, we made it official, but we didn't necessarily make it official at the same time. It wasn't really a thing that we're like, yeah, we're official. It was like, oh, you can tell people that I'm your like girlfriend and I'm your boyfriend now. And then we like look back at it and we're like, we didn't really make it official. We're like, I remember it was like still September and we like look back, we're like, we didn't officially make it official. We're like, yeah, we didn't. And then we got like super hyped. We're like, cause it's official now. We're like, what the heck? So I remember it being like that. But ever since then, I mean, it's been nothing but like the greatest time of my life.
How I met James. Okay, so I met James via Tinder, and I wasn't actually looking for a relationship at the time. I was just like, you know, I want physical affection and not making out. That's what it equates to me as a Christian, is making out when I find physical connection. And when I went on my first date with him, we were going to a drive-in movie theater, and I was like, oh, I guess we'll just make out at the movies, or I hope he doesn't expect anything more. And so I was swiping, I found him, we were talking for like, I think a good 2 weeks or something like that. He knows better. But he's not in this interview, is he? So it's up to me to create the narrative. Anyways, we were talking for a good amount of time, maybe a week or two over, we went from Tinder to text, and we were talking, and I didn't think much of our date leading up to it. I was actually a terrible texter at the beginning of our relationship, if you like to call it that at the time. And we went on our first date, and it was going to be sushi and a drive-in movie theater, because it was in the middle of COVID. There was really nothing else to do. And so we went to go get sushi, but what he said was dinner was going to be at, I believe 6, and then the movie was at 11, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do if he's boring? And he insisted on driving, so I said yes. I have Find My Friends, so, but I would recommend for young women not to do that, but I do have Find My Friends. People track me all the time. Codependency, it's a real disease. Anyways, whatever. So I was like, if he is boring, this is going to go very bad. I'm going to drone through the date. What happens after we eat? We have nothing to talk about. And then a drive-in movie, because pre-COVID, you could do stuff like bowling, things like that. If the conversation was dull, at least you'd have something to fill in the time. So I was very afraid, even of the car ride going to the movie. So I get in the car and I hug him immediately, which is something my ex didn't allow me to do. He said he didn't hug on the first date. So I thought, like, in my mind, I'm like, what happened though, like, young men? I mean, this is a good thing, that's very gentlemanly, but I was thinking, like, he won't even let me hug him, will he? Will he? So I get in the car and I hug him and I'm like, it seems like I've known you forever, which was true from her text and the humor, and it was very good. So I get in the car, we go, I'm talking, I'm just over talking because I'm afraid of being boring on a date, because if that's a deal breaker for me, I'm sure it's a deal breaker for someone else. So I'm just talking. I'm like, oh man, I'm doing that thing where I take all the weight on. And we get there, we sit down, the time goes like that. We just start talking. we're eating, we eat for a little bit, then we start observing, then we're talking about dictators, and we're talking about dictators and their sex life, and Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King's not a dictator, I'm not saying that, but just like his like complicated background and things like that, and controversies and things like that, and we just cracking up and we're laughing and we're making each other laugh. And at one point I go, hold on, because I'm like, do you know who Eric Andre is? Eric Andre is a comedian, for anyone out there who doesn't know. And he's like, no. And I'm like, I have a video that ties into our conversation perfectly. I take out my phone and we're late to the movie. And I'm like, has it not been 10 minutes? And I look down and I'm like, we're late to the movie. And he's like, oh my gosh. So we book into the car, we go to the movie, and our date lasted like 8 hours.
I was actually already dating someone, and I was in high school, and this guy I was with wasn't too great now that I look back. But Ethan, who I am now with, he DM'd me on Instagram and asked me out, and I was like, sorry, bud, I am with someone. And he apparently DM'd one of my friends too, and they shot him down. And I think that's kind of weird and awkward and funny. But then a few months go by, the guy that I was with broke up with me, and I was doing some soul searching over time, and I decided that I was okay with life right now. I don't want a boyfriend. I'm in high school. Who needs boys? Yeah, so I was doing some soul searching. I was finally content with myself. And then I liked an Instagram post, and it turns out it was his. He never posted on Instagram, especially of his face or of him smiling. And I liked it. And then he DMs me again. He was like, I saw that you liked my picture. And I was like, yeah. And and he goes, you never liked my pictures. So I was like, oh, well, I just like this one. I mean, I didn't put much thought into it. I was just scrolling and liking. So from that day forward, we just started texting and talking. And that's how we met, was literally through Instagram, because we have mutual friends. And then our first date was at the movie theater. We went to go see Black Panther. And it was really awkward. I don't remember too much, but I know it was awkward. So we've been together since March 5th of 2018, so almost 5 years. I'll go ahead and say it's 5 years because I don't keep count anymore. But I don't know, I just love him unconditionally, platonically, all of the above things. He's like my best friend, and we've never felt like we've had to try. I mean, yeah, in the beginning stages everyone tries, but I've always felt like I could be myself. He lets me burp and fart around him, even the stinky ones. I know that's TMI, but we all do it, and then don't lie and say that you don't, because I know that you do. But he's amazing. We have common interests. I am definitely the talkative one of our relationship, and he's definitely the listener. And I like to think that I have the pants, but he begs to differ. But I like wearing pants, so I think I have the pants. And then I didn't say I love you right away like he did. He kind of said it pretty soon. Took me a few months, because that's a strong word. I very much believe that you should not use that word, free willy, because I really do believe in I love yous. If you say it, I really do believe it, even though I always ask him, do you really mean it? But I know he does. It's reassurance type thing. But I definitely think if you're going to say I love you to someone, you better mean it, because damn, is that going to hurt if you didn't mean it. But I knew I loved him and wanted to be with him forever was when, and I noticed that, I've always known I wanted to be with him, but it didn't hit me until we both went our separate ways. last year I got into the Disney college program, and he joined the Army because he wasn't sure what he was going to do with life. And so I moved to Florida, and then he went to basic training in North Carolina, and we didn't see each other for a while. And it wasn't until he left for basic training that I realized this is like the first time I won't have him around. Like, this is the first time I won't get to see him every day, talk to him every day, be around him. I can't do this without him. I can't live without him. It was then that I decided I love him so much. He's literally going to go do something to better his life and change his life for himself. He's for me, for his future. You know, like, and I know I say for me, but I'm with him, so I mean, like, you got to work, but got to do something, right? It's a big deal, and that's when I realized I really wanted to marry him at that point, because I loved him so much. I didn't want to live without him a single day. And here we are now. We are in our first apartment together. Well, technically it's our second apartment. Our first apartment was 3 months ago, but we're in our second apartment together, and I feel like we're happy and healthy. And the next step is just a paper that says we're married.
I've always known I would marry Rich. Why should I be ashamed of that?
There's nothing to be ashamed of, as long as you love him.
Well, I believe we have some power over who we love. It isn't something that just happens to a person.
I think the poets might disagree.
Well, I'm not a poet. I'm just a woman. And as a woman, there's no way for me to make my own money. Not enough to earn a living or to support my family. And if I had my own money, which I don't, that money would belong to my husband the moment we got married. And if we had children, they would be his, not mine. They would be his property. So don't sit there and tell me that marriage isn't an economic proposition, because it is. It may not be for you, but it most certainly is for me.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today. Marriage, that blessed arrangement, that dream within a dream.
Marriage looks different for everybody. Some people do it for the legal purposes. Some people do it because they're in love with someone and they just want to live with the person for the rest of their lives. But why do people get married? And really, what does marriage look like to everybody? For me, marriage is finding that person you really love and you just want to spend the rest of your life with them. It's your ultimate companion. It's the person that you obviously love the most, but if you get in a fight with them, you'd rather fight with them than anyone else, and you'd still make up for it. We all know the statistics that half of marriages end in divorce. So how do people make it work?
Because they like each other, and if you like it, you should put a ring on it.
When you are committing to somebody to be their person for the rest of your life, so like when Cody proposed to me, he didn't ask, will you marry me? He said, will you be my sunshine for the rest of your life? So we call each other Sunshine or Honey Bear. I call him Honey Bear. And like, just those kinds of things. And so when he asked me to marry him, it wasn't like a, will you marry me? It was a, will you step into our relationship and tell the whole wide world that you are my sunshine for the rest of my life? And then why people get married, honestly, wedding planning is a bitch. I don't know why people do this. But I guess like just that open thought of like, oh, this person is my husband. It's like, it carries a lot more weight in like anything. So like, especially for insurance, because my health insurance is way better than his health insurance. I tried to put him on my health insurance And it would have costed like 10 times more him as my fiance versus him as my husband. What the heck? Like, our relationship doesn't really change. We live together right now. So like, I don't anticipate our relationship changing so much when we officially are married, but it changes the way that the rest of the world sees us.
Marriage is a union between two people to come together and basically spend like their lives together, emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually, and to kind of have that space where they can be vulnerable with each other, authentic, transparent, and wanting to also, in a spiritual sense, glorify God and basically communicate to the world God's love for humankind.
That's like the ultimate commitment, man. There's like, you know, that's like basically you turn your love into a contractual kind of a like give and take, like, you know, like, all right, we're gonna make, like, we've already made it official, we've already done this for a while, let's make it even more official with like a ring, and, you know, let's involve I feel like that's what society expects out of a couple. Do I agree with it? That it's like so impressed upon people to get married to, like, in order to show love, like their love, like, no, like people can be in a committed relationship for 30 years, you know? And to me, I don't think that means any less than someone who got married.
People say that the honeymoon phase isn't always long-lived. So for the people that are married and have been for a while, how do they make it work? What's the key to a long-lasting marriage?
I think making it work is communicating. And how do you make it interesting is try to think of something. Maybe if you think, gee, I want to just do something, the two of us, or just as a family, then you need to, the other person doesn't know what you're thinking. So you need to tell them, I think I want to do something. I want to do some, you know, let's, you know, go to the beach, or well, sometimes Dad will say, I don't really care, that's fine. Or other times he'll have an opinion and he'll want to do part of the planning. So it kind of depends on what it is, or how big it is, or let's go out to eat after. Let's just, like, a spontaneous thing could be just, let's go out to eat, or let's go to a movie without planning. But you have to plan a little bit more when you have kids. But so what Dad and I used to do is Aunt Mary would come over and watch you guys about, I don't know if it was once a month or something, and we would go out to eat, just the two of us. And that was nice. And that would be like an evening. And sometimes we would go to a movie, not always. But, and before that, before we had children, we just kind of did, I don't know, we wouldn't plan a whole lot of stuff. We would just say, let's just go and do, Dad didn't really like to shop, but let's go and, you know, like if you would want to go to a Penn State football game, we had to plan that a little bit, but it was a little bit more thinking, let's go to the arts festival at Penn State. And we did. But then when we had you guys, and then had the, like, I guess you could call it a date night, then we kind of got away from that. And I think it's just because other things, when you would start, then we would do things with you, with sports and all. So it just changed focus according to what's going on in your life, I think. But keeping it interesting is, if there's something that I wanted to do or Dad wanted to do, we would just tell each other that, you know, I'd really like to do this sometime, or whatever that is. It's just all about communicating what you're thinking. Or I don't want to do anything. I just want to order in tonight. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to order Chinese and tonight and just sit.
Yeah, treating her like a queen. No. I think it is never getting bored with life. There's so much to see and do, so much experience, and to be able to share it with others. That's the key. Never done growing, and whether that's in our faith or in our relationship with each other. That is, I think, what sustains us and propels us forward.
And always being kind to each other, and you know, don't forget about those early days that you've had together, and not being, I would say, always just always trying to do for the other person to make it work.
She's smart, funny, attractive.
Attractive?
You know, she's got nice skin.
Skin? You're saying Dean's dating my sister because of her skin?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying it could be a contributing factor.
Hermione's got nice skin. Wouldn't you say? As skin goes, I mean.
I've never really thought about it. But I suppose, yeah. Very nice.
We all know that everyone has those standards of what they want for and they look for in a partner, but does everyone's current partner meet up to their expectations? Do they fall short at all? And if they fall short, why do they still make the relationship work? How do they do it?
I'd say Tally is very goofy, but in a good way. Something that I've always understood is their energy is very positive when talking, when even meeting somebody or being around people. And that measures up to one of my deal breakers, because whenever there's somebody new that they're coming across, or even some of my friends that they see, or just anybody, they're always asking about them, and they're always trying to find something to relate to when talking to a person, and I like that. And so they're very likable. They're also very family oriented, and have goals. With working at Disney now, they're ready to get on the grind to where they need to be to go into culinary arts. So I say altogether, they're very well-rounded, and they are actually really talented in so many things. They sing, they know how to paint, they know how to take pictures, they know how to dance. They were a dancer for a long time. And yeah, so I just feel checks on the list.
All right, well, Grant is one of the most caring and loving people I've ever met. He's, I don't know, he's the one. He's the one for me. He's always, our first date went on for hours and hours. We get along on so many levels.
Sometimes we fight.
Of course we fight sometimes. But at the end of the day, we always go back to each other. We always apologize to each other, no matter who was wrong or right. And yeah, I think he lives up to what I look for in a partner, just because, well, one, my dating track record was always tall brunettes, so but also I've just never met somebody that cares for me as much as he does, and I've never met someone who has so much in common with me, and I think it's through that I genuinely grew to love him.
So I feel like Evie is very funny, down to earth. It's they're down to earth in the sense that they will tell you exactly what you need to hear when you need to hear it, but not sugarcoat it. But then they'll also hit you with the humor at the end of it. So it's you get this weird sensation of feeling welcomed, being able to just take a load off and take a deep breath. And the thing that I love most about Evie is no matter what, they're always ready. Even if they're exhausted or they're going through it, they're always putting their stuff aside to make sure that everybody else around them is able to have like a shoulder to cry on, someone to laugh with, to share something. It's like they're always putting themselves second for other people. And as much as I get on their head about doing that, because you have to put yourself first, it is one of the most like cutest and like sweetest things. They're like a little gift all the time. And I love that about them, because I feel like they have hit every need and want that I've ever had, of like having a best friend, being able to be like gross, weird, whatever I feel like, and just being very accepting of how I express myself as a person, whether it's like changing my sexuality, gender, dysphoria, like anything. I know I can run to them and they'll be my biggest like support system. They'll be like, it's okay, we got this, we're gonna figure this out, let's set up a game plan. And I like love that. So I feel like they've never fallen short, which is like really great to say.
When I think of Alan, I think of reliability. Like, I know, you know, he might not wake up for the first alarm, but if I need him, if I need him, he'll be there. I feel safe when I'm around him. I feel like he, you know, puts on that protective partner in, you know, situations where you might have like family members being unkind or whatnot. So in all facets of life, he's been a supportive figure to me, you know, emotionally, physically, everything. So I don't know if physically is a word for that. But no, I enjoy his spark, his attitude, or, you know, lack thereof sometimes. But overall, his wonder for adventure and his excitement for the future. So those are enjoyable.
Every relationship has its ups and downs. The high points, maybe a first kiss. The low point, maybe an argument that got you to break up or almost break
Just
up.
because I want to know we're going in the same direction, that we're on the same page.
Yes, we are.
Well, we live on different planets.
You're talking about the fake future.
I guess we want different things.
Clearly we do.
Well, clearly we do.
All right, so what are you saying? Should we just break up?
How do we get out of those low points for the people that are still together? What is a point that's so low that would make you just not want to be with a person anymore? How do we make it out to the other side?
I'd say when we started to open up to each other was a really good point in being able to be open with each other and kind of, because we did it roughly at the same time, and it was something that was something that, at least on my end, I felt very relieved and very like safe, I guess would be a good way of putting it. It's actually secure would probably be an even better term to use, because we haven't really had any like specific moments.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would say I do think there's say one of the, like, I'd say it's something that happens on occasion of us just struggling to talk to each other a little bit sometimes. And it's something that is slightly, like, I'd say that would probably be the, like, and it's just something that we sometimes do, and it's not really a big thing, it's just that something that just sometimes, because, and this is something that I do want to bring up, is that I do think that with the whole being excited thing is, I think with that, I think I'm guilty of the same thing, and I cause the same thing the other way, and sometimes we are kind of both do that to each other at the same time, and we kind of don't really want to talk as much.
It was a really fun day where we like went to the park together, and we had like a whole picnic and played soccer. It was raining, and we just played soccer together for a while. It was really fun. And like afterwards we went back to my house and we watched a movie. Again, it was raining, so we actually like it was so cheesy, but we like danced in the rain. We had a dance party. It was really fun. That's like a day that I really love. Is just like a fun time. Honestly, almost every time I hang out with him, it's like this is the best day ever. Because we always end up being goofy together. We always end up like we could be goofy in 1 minute and then have a completely serious conversation in the next minute, where it's like it's just fun. Like even like little moments, like we're walking through Spectrum and actually no, we were walking down the street and someone drove by playing like DJ Khaled, and we just started dancing, like having a party with someone who just drove by, and we're like, yes, raise the roof. And it's like, and like singing at the top of our lungs. It's just stuff like that where I'm like, it doesn't get any better than this. Like, this person is my best friend. Yeah, so that's honestly, yeah, any time I spend time with him is a high, honestly. Even the hard stuff, it's like, it's hard stuff, but it's with you. Yeah, I told him about the phone call and I kind of cried, and he cried, actually. That was the first time I've seen him cry, because he was like, I just don't know what to say. Like, I don't want to come off as defensive, but it's just not true. And he was crying, and he kind of gave me all the info, like, look, here are text messages, here are pictures, here's like the contact information of people that I know, like, go ask them. Like, I was kind of confronted with like, okay, how much do I actually trust him, I guess is the word. And I came up with like, no, yeah, I trust you completely, because of all the things that I had found. And I won't go into more detail on what I found. That was a low point, that phone call. And then me moving away, but that's been less hard because we're kind of looking at it as we could just get to know each other just through talking, like FaceTime and stuff, which is really good. So it's been a little hard in that regard, but otherwise healthy, I think. Yeah, no, that phone call was definitely a low point.
There's a lot. Like, we went to watch movies like first week of actually meeting. We started going to church together all the time. You know, instead of like we're just going to church, it was more like together. There was our it kind of is a high point at the hindsight of it, of this struggle of there was this phone call that happened where she was told a lot of misinformation about me, and we had worked through that all, but after that whole conversation there was a lot more love on both sides, and we both were just like, yeah, okay, this is who I want to be with. So it really kind of grew our relationship from there. I mean, I guess it would still be that phone call again, because in the deering, not the hindsight, there were a lot of emotions on both ends where there was information being told of like that I drink and smoke, but I had to show her that I clearly don't do those things. But to be told anything from someone who you trust and from them telling it to you out of love is still a hard thing, where the phone call who it came from was purely out of love for Rory, to warn her. Although we had talked about all of it, it was still, you know, difficult thing, because it's like, okay, I just got to make sure that she knows that is not me.
People that are just looking to date, or they already are in a relationship, what's some advice people have to say? Whether they are single, dating, engaged, married.
My dating advice, easy off the top of my head, I've probably mentioned it twice in this already, but make a written non-negotiables list. Make it, think about it, edit it if you need to, but really like have a non-negotiables list and then follow up with it when you do meet somebody that you get butterflies around, when you do meet somebody that you have a great conversation with, when you do meet somebody who's interested in you. Use that non-negotiables list. I can say it's been 2 years since like my first and only relationship so far has ended, and already it is like that non-negotiables list I made at the end of that relationship has already helped me to nip 2 other potential people in the bud.
The thing that I've learned is be friends with a person before you try to dig into anything romantically, because not only are you creating a foundation, like you're also getting to know the person that maybe at the beginning you're just like, oh, like they're so cute, you know, like I just like want to be with them. But then what happens if you come across something in their personality where you're like, okay, you know, one of your deal breakers. So I think the biggest thing is just like working up to actually a relationship and getting to know a person before anything. And then also not letting your own standards like fall just because you want to be with somebody. Like making sure that, you know, even though it might take longer to find somebody or longer in the dating scene, that you're actually settling with somebody who fulfills what you need.
Don't be a jerk.
You have to, you can have hope for things, but you have to understand that you can't control a person, or just because you're friends, or if there's any, just because there's a healthy relationship there to begin with, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to develop into anything more, or it needs to, or they want it to. So a relationship takes both people to be wanting of it, so you have to understand that. And as long as you just listen to somebody and make an effort to provide for them and their needs, then it's a healthy relationship.
Know what you want, like in a person. I think it's important that you have, you know, sort of the same politics, same sort of religious or worldview, or if you don't, be able to compromise and agree to disagree and not be contentious about it, because the last thing you want to do is fight with your partner for the next 40 years about something that none of you are going to fundamentally change your mind on.
Get comfortable with yourself and just grow closer with your friends and try to expand your friend circle. Focus on your friends, focus on you, focus on getting your, especially finances, in order before you actually look for getting into a relationship, because, you know, there are things that you got to take care of before you meet the one, and then all of a sudden you want to have kids and move into a house that costs money.
Don't settle. Whatever standards you have, if you feel like you aren't really getting any hits and everything to with dating, please, you know, keep your standards.
I think the first thing I would probably say is know yourself and know what you want. Don't like your psychology and all that, because I think that you put in. So the more you know yourself and what you want and what your priorities are, then you know what to look for in a partner.
First, I mean, I kind of want to know their situation. Any like blunt dating advice is really just get to know the person, try to, you know, show yourself at like the best capacity that you can for them.
Just because someone Well, it depends on the situation. General advice, just because someone says they like you doesn't mean that you have to date them.
Let every relationship and let every date build you up for when you find the one. It's gonna hurt. There's gonna be things that hurt. Unrequited love, heartbreak, they all live in the same camp. Long lost love, they all live in the same camp. But don't let it. But if you're gonna let it be a camp, because we're all gonna be in that camp at one point, let it be your base camp to build up.
Get to know the person. Don't rush into anything too quick.
Whatever that person's going through, like, I mean, and you can apply this to life too, like, no matter what happens, like, it will pass, but
yeah, I think my dating advice is like, it's not what a lot of guys like to hear, because there's, they want to feel good, right? But you gotta be realistic about it, because being in a committed, serious relationship, like, it's another, like, set of responsibility, and that's not a bad thing. Like, that's how you grow as a person and as a couple. And I think I would let my friends know, like, why do you want to be in a relationship? Like, what is it that is so important that you want this now?
There's no like one size fits all solution to this question. People are very unique, and their needs and what they're looking for are really unique. I would say, I'm not gonna say, like the traditional, like, people who are in the relationships who say this to single people are like, it'll find you when you least expect it, or, just put yourself out there, because I don't think that anyone benefits from that. You can't do anything actionable. I would say, and this is kind of a counter to the whole, love yourself first, and like, you need to be your own number one fan first. I think before that, if you haven't already, really dig deep and discover who you are and what your standards are.
Make sure your end goal in life is the same. Whether that is to travel the world as your end goal, find someone who wants to travel the world, not start a family, because those are two opposing things.
That if you're going to start a relationship, understand that there needs to be boundaries. Like, that is the first thing that needs to be set, of what are your own personal boundaries, what are things you're not going to meet in the middle about, and how you want to be treated. And something my mom always told me was like, it's okay to have boundaries, it's okay to have wants and needs, but never put someone on such a high pedestal. Because once this person falls short a little bit, it's like your entire world gets shattered. You give this person so much meaning, so understand that you need to be the one on the pedestal. You need to put yourself in that way, so then you understand your wants and needs and not sacrifice your feelings for somebody else.
Be kind in all of your communication and all you do, and be yourself, number 2. And I think that's the order of those. Because if you be yourself first and then kind comes second, then it could go all kinds of sideways. But if you're kind in all of your relationships, even just in passing communication, that's a good start. And people will notice that. But number 2, be yourself, because you don't want to have a false portrayal of who you are. That's always terrible when you have to have this mask and you have to live within it. I've done it. I've totally done it. I've gotten away with it. So be yourself. And then number 3, be patient.
It's okay to be picky and do what's best for you, and at the end of the day, know your worth.
For me, I guess it just depends on what kind of advice you're asking for. I mean, if you're in a committed relationship and you don't see anything going with that significant other, or you don't feel like this isn't the person for you, I always recommend, we're young. I'm 23. We're all still pretty young. You don't have to be committed to that one person. You can you can take a break and move on, and eventually, you know, if you feel like, oh, if this is something that I want again, then get back together with them. I mean, dating is a slippery slope of emotions, and eventually, you know, you just find somebody that you match with.
I would encourage them to get to know them deeply, understand what makes them who they are, explore together what they believe, what they think, and find out whether or not there's that kind of mutual acceptance. Do they also take delight in knowing you and learning about you as well? I think that's what dating is really all about, getting to really know the other person, but also realizing you're still only scratching the surface, because you're just setting the precedent for that being the way you operate together. Because once you're married, you're still going to learn a tremendous amount more about the person. That's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm. But I think you do need to talk, discuss different topics to see if you're in alignment with that person, see what their values are, what they believe, what their thoughts are on different subjects. And they're not all going to always align, but I think you have to really be sensitive that most of them do, because once you're in a committed relationship, which is, I believe marriage is for life, that you're not going to agree on a lot of things.
Strengths and weaknesses in every person, and you just have to see if your strengths mirror and complement theirs, so that like you aren't just all strength, all weakness. Like having somebody who has the exact same strengths as you isn't going to do you any good.
I would simply say try and just genuinely connect with them. And I mean, just like for the sake of being connected, because that in and of itself feels good.
Be your like genuine true self. Don't go out of your way to pretend to be something that you're not, and you're gonna attract the people who want to be around you.
If you don't worry about it, it'll probably find you, like, I swear. And sometimes you need to wait because you need to find that right person. You don't need to settle down with the person that you just see across the room. It's good to have standards. It's good to have priorities. And sometimes living a little before you have a relationship gives you more experience than having a relationship, because then you'll know what you want in a relationship. So that's probably the advice I would give.
To your heart, but also listen to your head. And like your gut too. Like your body and your like sixth sense kind of can tell you if something's off or if something's like gonna go really well. So always listen to that. Always take that into account.
So many times in the media or movies and TV, men are portrayed in certain ways, whether they're aggressive, they're just clueless, or they're super romantic and check every box that we have. We even see that on social media all the time, people getting engaged and married and having children. And I just wanted to know when it was my turn.
This bitch got me paying on rent, paying for trips.
So I've just decided I'm probably gonna stay single my whole life, because men will always find new ways to disappoint you. Just when you think they've stopped, they have not. Okay? And I am convinced that there is not a man out there who is willing to make a commitment for the rest of his life, because they will always continually disappoint you. I think the most interesting thing I got out of these interviews, whether I interviewed people that were single, dating, engaged, married, gay, straight, any gender identity, any relationship status, was that there still were the common denominators. A lot of people said that Marriage is something that's lifelong, whether they came from a religious background or they didn't. And why is that? Is it because society ingrains in us that marriage is long-lasting? Is it an idea we get from the movies? And I just thought it was so interesting that a lot of people did say the same thing of good communication is good for a relationship, or having similar values really makes it, even when we have heard that opposites attract. And what does opposites attract even mean? Opposite values? Opposite sex, some people might argue? I think the most interesting thing is that we have seen so many different types of relationships in life. Whether it's someone we know, someone in movies or TV, our own parents, we see relationships all the time. And it really is a matter of personal preference and how people make it work. Each relationship is so different and unique. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's always gonna work for you. So now, where I go from here at least, is that I see that all relationships cannot always be reflected on me. My relationships, whenever that is gonna happen, is gonna be different from even the people I interviewed in this. My relationship is what I make of it. So going forward, I think we should all keep that in mind. Each relationship is gonna have its own highs and lows, and it's gonna look different for everybody what their deal breakers are. I think in the end, you just kind of go on a date, see if you like the person, and go from there. At the end of the day, you should find someone who loves you for you. That's what we all want, right? A healthy relationship.
Well, I don't think you're single, so.
Okay, Ben, I'm gonna mute you. Okay. First question. Please describe your relationship status.
Married.
These are good questions, though. Like, it reminds me of my interview with Chick-fil-A.
Mango wants to squeak his squeaker.
You cut this.
Cut the film.